Hello everyone and welcome back to the video. In today's video we are going to be going over the most overrated characters in Smash Ultimate, and a couple disclaimers for this is going to be just because a character is overrated does not mean that they are bad, because there's going to be a couple top tiers on here that I'm going to say are overrated that are still top tiers, really good characters, just not quite as good as everyone else thinks. I did a top 5 video of the most underrated characters in this game and I just completely forgot to do the overrated one, so now we're going to be doing that. If your character's on this list again, and it doesn't mean the character's necessarily bad, I just think people praise them a little bit too much. And the first character that I want to talk about is going to be an honorable mention, and that is going to be Peach. Now, the reason for Peach isn't because anything in her kit specifically. I think her kit is ridiculous, and Float is amazing. I'd still argue a top 20 character, but the amount of work that you have to put in with Peach versus other characters is unreal. You just look at one Mewtwo set, the amount of micro movement he is doing constantly is insanity, and you basically can't approach as this character because of how bad your mobility is. You have to play a whiff punish style, and if people aren't giving you those openings, it is extremely difficult for her to win. Now, she does hit you super hard, but that's only if you're doing these insane turn-up combos as well as having your conversions on point, getting your float cancels at all times. You need to be doing so much more with Peach than you have to do with some other top tiers like Mythra, for example. You hit one back air, you're getting 50. With Peach, you need to work a 9 to 5 all day. It's actually insane how hard Peach players need to work, but if you're able to put in that work and put it into practice like someone like Mewtwo does, the character is ridiculous, so that's the reason I'm putting her as an honorable mention. And my first character is going to be Ice Climbers. This is a bit of a polarizing one because there are certain matchups where Ice Climbers bodies characters. I think specifically characters like Fox, like Diddy Kong, Mario, characters that are having to fight with your face. Ice Climbers definitely not overrated then because of how much option coverage they have, as well as their tip boxes are fairly disjointed, so they can just absolutely box those characters out. But if you even have a slight disjoint or a move that's just somewhat intangible, like a good projectile, you should be destroying Ice Climbers, and people still do not know the matchup very well. They still don't know how to deal with Nana, and also the importance of dealing with Nana. I feel like a lot of the time you're seeing at the top level people getting away with saving their Nana for free, or they'll go for a ledge trap instead of killing Nana. People need to get way better at killing Nana before Ice Climbers actually starts to see a little bit of a drop-off, which I think will happen, but there's also the counter arguments of Ice Climbers meta getting pushed further because of how hard they're hitting you, and that is unarguable. Ice Climber is one of the characters that hits you the hardest in the game, but we've seen these archetypes before. We've also seen them fail. I'd say most prevalently you have Luigi, who's had kind of varying amounts of success throughout the meta. He's having a little bit of a resurgence right now with characters like Luigi or Waka doing very well with him, but I think Ice Climbers is going to see a little bit more of a dropout as people start getting better at dealing with Nana, but also as people just start counterpicking Ice Climbers, because there are certain Ice Climbers matchups that are just straight up unwinnable. I don't know how you're supposed to win Min Ice Climbers, Steve Ice Climbers, Aegis Ice Climbers is really tough. There's so many matches for Ice Climbers that are abysmal, and a lot of those abysmal matchups are characters that are incredibly easy to secondary. So I think if you're ever having trouble with an Ice Climber player, you still do need to learn the matchup, which is obviously going to be a problem if there's no experience for you. But if you have an Ice Climber player to play against, that I would highly recommend just picking up a secondary. It is going to become way easier because of, again, how polarizing some of those matchups are. Next up is going to be Incineroar, and this is a bit of a weird topic right now, just considering how well SkyJ has been doing as of late, and he has undeniably been farming like the best he ever has. And again, I still don't think Incineroar is a bad character, but I'm seeing people put this character towards the higher end of high tier sometimes. I think he's more towards the higher end of mid tier, maybe low high tier as well, but this character is still good. He has some very strong strengths, but he also has some very weak weaknesses that people really aren't punishing because they are just super afraid of him. People are so afraid to camp Incineroar because the one time they'll commit, he'll revenge, and they don't know what to do. The second an Incineroar player gets revenge, everyone loses their mind. I'll tell you what you need to do. You just need to whiff punish, because the Incineroar does have a timer on that you have to commit. If you need to camp out the full 40 seconds or whatever it is for Incineroar's down B, then just do that, because there is no real ways he can super get on you aside from a side B burst option. But if he misses that, he's pretty much just going to die as well, and you can just grab him. There's so many ways to deal with down B, and again, this is all easier said than done, but people just get so panicked. You need to play calm. You need to keep your game plan consistent. I feel like the second people get that down B online, the game plans go out the window and they just think, I need to grab right now, and that's all they're fishing for, that's all they're thinking about. So I think if people get better at dealing with down B, they can be a huge thing, as well as just understanding side B's burst range more. I think spot dodge versus side B is something that we really don't see a ton, or at least enough. It is obviously a very good counter to it, but there are specific places where you can't really get away with it. I've seen a lot of people try to roll away from side B. Most of the time it will be able to cover, so people just getting better at dealing with side B. But the main thing is going to be people just becoming more confident versus the character. As the character becomes much more common because with the rise of SkyJ, and by the way, this is no shade to SkyJ, like, oh, people just don't know the match, why he's losing. No, SkyJ most of the time is just saying, yeah, I'm a better player than you, and he's just making correct reads. He's just better playing people. That's Incineroar helping him out as well because of how scary the character is. But with the rise of SkyJ, you're going to see more Incineroar players probably trying it out. The matchup's going to get more common. People are going to get better at exploiting him, and I wouldn't be surprised if more Incineroar players found it way harder to get to the top, like SkyJ has. No, SkyJ, I think he'll definitely stay on the top for at least a little bit because that man is ridiculous, but I think it's more SkyJ being cracked than Incineroar being cracked. Next up is going to be Sephiroth. Now, Sephiroth is also a character that we've been seeing having a decent amount of success at the top level. You know, you have Tweak doing amazing with him, you have Ken having some very good results, and there's some other people doing work as well. But my main problem with Sephiroth is he is just really hard. And he doesn't give kind of the same reward that other swordsmen get. Other swordsmen, they have this safe, constant pressure. I'm thinking Chrom, for example. Chrom can just kind of spam these super disjointed moves in the air on your shield and get away with it. Sephiroth, he cannot do that at all. Every single thing with Sephiroth is a massive commitment. Whether you want to forward air, back air, F-tilt, nair even, it's such a big commitment by Sephiroth, so you need to be thinking a lot more. Your neutral game is way harder than the other swordsmen, but you still have the disadvantages of the other swordsmen of not having the big combos. Most swordsmen, it's like, yeah, you'll take not having massive combos for a better neutral game, as well as having these massive disjoints that are going to keep you safe. But Sephiroth, while he does have the disjoints, doesn't really have that easy neutral game that you're kind of looking for in a swordsman, as well as you need to have incredible spacing with him, because if you're not spacing your back airs, your forward airs, your F-tilts, the weak hits of his move are, as I said, weak. They are pathetic. You are not really going to be killing for a very long time, even with weak back air. But Sephiroth does have one saving grace, and that's going to be Wing. If Sephiroth had Wing at all times, he's like a top 10, maybe even top 5 character. That mobility boost is insane. He hits much harder. He gets that obvious third jump. But a lot of the time, he's not getting his X factor. You're not even living long enough to get Wing. Even when you're in a disadvantageous position, like let's say you lost the first stock, maybe you get it at 60 this time, you'll have it for like maybe 20%. It's just not something that lasts around for a long time. Now, sometimes if you're making huge comebacks, that's when Wing can be important because it'll last forever. But outside of that, you don't see it find as much value as you kind of need it to, which is a huge problem. And then just being light in general is always something that's going to hurt you. But Sephiroth needs to work hard. His spacing needs to be really good. And then again, he is a swordsman. He's not hitting you super hard. Like, he doesn't have really any combos besides like maybe some nair into back air stuff, up B into something, just an up B read in general. I guess you can't really combo into up B, but getting a read with up B can get you a lot of damage, but that's kind of your only huge openers. I think side B may be something that could push his meta a little bit further, but as of now, I think Sephiroth has to work way too hard for what he's actually providing the player. Next up is going to be Mewtwo. Now, Mewtwo is one that I don't really have a problem with any of his stuff in general. The obvious one is going to be that he is massive and he is incredibly light, and you can catch him super easy because of how his tail works. Now, they did make the tail a little bit better, so the hitbox on it is smaller, but it's still pretty big. And I think the problem for Mewtwo is there's just people that do what he does, but better. You know, he is that charge shot floaty archetype, and there's characters that kind of do the same thing, but they're just doing it better than he does, and I think that's going to be kind of a massive problem for him. There's no real reason to super pick Mewtwo, and there are some good things about him. You know, I think he has pretty strong tilts. I think having a command grab is always nice. Shadow Ball is still a broken move because charge shots are this game are broken, but I think a lot of his pressure is also just kind of like fake. He can't really do too much stuff that's safe on shield, but of course he does have that side B mix up, which is always going to be kind of his major threat, but all of his aerials are fairly unsafe on shield. I feel like a lot of his nair pressure as well is just fake, and people don't know how to deal with it. I don't think his recovery is particularly amazing. I mean, he does have a teleport up B, but that means two framing is kind of free with the character, or against the character rather. And also, this is just kind of a message against people playing Mewtwo. If you're playing Mewtwo in 2023 and he's recovering, you should not be getting hit by these back airs, these up airs. You should not be getting sharked at all. You know they're going to go for it. They have this big jump. They have the aerial. It's very predictable. Just hold shield at the ledge and react to them going for the up B, or wait until they actually burn their jump. It isn't that hard. Mewtwo's get so much free damage from that. And a lot of that stuff is, again, it's just like, it's something that it's very easy to look out for. You know how to counter it, and people just kind of aren't doing it enough. So I think Mewtwo is an okay character. I just think that there's other characters that do what they do a little bit better, as well as being kind of inconsistent because of how big they are and how light they are. And my final character is going to be Marth, and the one reason for that is going to be a word that you're going to be hearing a lot in this segment, and that's going to be he's inconsistent. Now, there's a lot of reasons why characters can be inconsistent. It can be because they're slow, it can be because they're really hard, it can be because a lot of their stuff is committal. For Marth, it's because he just sometimes doesn't kill you until 180 because of how Tippers work. And even the best Marth players in the world are struggling from this sometime. For every stock that they're taking at 30, 40, 50 with like a Dancing Blade, with like a forward smash read, with a really well spaced back air off stage, they are taking stocks at like 180, 190 with up throw. They're barely getting their conversions, spamming up at a shield, and even that doesn't work sometimes. Marth is just a character that if you want to do consistently well with him in tournament, it is incredibly difficult to do. But I will say, I think Marth as a secondary is an okay option. I know I've memed on Leo's Marth a lot on this channel just because like Lamau go Lucina, but if you're playing against a character that the entire time you want to be at that max distance, you want to be spacing them out, you want to be whiff punishing, I think Marth can find success there. I would still recommend Lucina because you're going to have that consistency on your side. Your edge guarding is going to be better in general because you don't need to rely on tippers as much. Your spacing doesn't need to be as precise, as well as you're probably just not going to be waiting to like 150, 180 up throw percent kill grabs, but I think Lucina is still a better secondary. I think Marth can be a good secondary though, but if you had to play just one of them in tournament, I'd obviously recommend Lucina, and that's probably the Marth downfall, honestly, that Lucina just exists. I think if Lucina wasn't in this game, I'd probably think much higher of Marth because, you know, he still does have a nice sword, he still sometimes has some crazy tipper kills, he still has an amazing up at a shield, but he's just too inconsistent for me to think he's a decent character. But my actual final two characters are going to be Steve and Kazia. Now, I'll be brief on Steve because he is still the best character in the game. I know I said it was Sonic for a little bit. I was wrong. Steve is still the best character in the game. I don't think he's quite ban-worthy, though. You know, the Steve tech isn't good enough for us to be banning him, I don't think, at this point. I think it was kind of more of a scapegoat. But hey, I overreacted too. I could definitely admit that. I wanted that character banned. I take it back. He's not ban-worthy yet. It could be happening in the future when people get better at their conversions. But for now, he is an overrated character. And then Kazia is just also an overrated character. I've seen some places ban Kazia. I think that's completely ridiculous. This character is nowhere near being ban-worthy. If you just want to do it for the fun of your local, then I guess that's fine. But if you want to do it from a competitive standpoint, he has very, very many exploitable weaknesses. As well as I think Kazia can only get worse as a character because at some point, the training room combos can only take you so far. This character's been able to zero-death people essentially since he came out, you know. Like, you can electric, and once you get that electric, you're going to get a kill. But that's kind of as far as it goes. The real Kazia players are going to be the ones that are having success in the neutral game, and that's where Kazia is going to start struggling as people get better against playing against him. They're going to know how to exploit him more, maybe picking up some secondaries because he has some like pretty unwinnable matchups because of how bad his neutral game is. So I think as people get better versus Kazia, we're going to start to see him falling off. I think we're already seeing it fall off. As you know, Riddles is kind of the only Kazia player left that's having a lot of success. T and Tedek are still having success with him as a secondary, but it's mainly Riddles getting into those top 8s consistently with him. There are other Kazia players, of course, doing well, but at the super top level, you're seeing Kazia starting to struggle more and more. You've been seeing Riddles rely a little bit more on that Terry secondary, so that's just my thought, and I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Now, every single character that I mentioned in this video, they're not necessarily bad characters. I think the only ones that you could argue for bad are Marth and maybe Mewtwo, but I'd say even both those characters are more towards that mid-tier area, lower part of mid-tier, but still that mid-tier area. They all have their strengths. They can all find success with the tournament. If you're playing these characters, you definitely shouldn't stop playing them because it's Smash Ultimate. Even everyone I listed, even the characters below those characters can still have success in this game because of how broken everybody is. But I thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'm curious what your guys' most underrated or overrated characters are. And I'm also curious if there's anything I got wrong in this video. Just let me know down below if there's anything I forgot to add. All that kind of good stuff. Sport's been absolutely unreal lately, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye-bye.